Hi, Isabella. My name is Nicole Chimampofo, and I'm going to start our interview. But before we get started, can you please restate your name, your year of study, your program, and your racial identity?
Of course, of course. I'm very excited for the interview. My name is Isabella. I'm in my third year at U of T Mississauga, and I am studying biology for health sciences, anthropology, and psychology. And I
Beautiful.
am biracial. I am half Black Hispanic. So my dad is from Panama and he is Black, and my mom is white and she's from Canada.
Okay, so I'm first going to go through the overview of study. We do have 5 questions,
Hmm.
which is going to be comprised of 4 sections. So to get started, a sample of racialized undergraduate students from UTM reported experiences that suggest that their personality expression differs depending on whether they are in public or private spaces on a daily basis. For example, participants adjusted their behavior in public to be more careful, more agreeable, and to show more enthusiasm. Interestingly, when racialized students were in private spaces or with others of the same ethnic background, their personality expression differed, raising the possibility that they were less likely to adjust their behavior when by themselves or with similar others, also known as code switching. What are your thoughts about this study?
Yeah, so as a biracial person, I definitely can understand how a lot of participants felt like they needed to adjust their behavior in public. I often feel like I need to adjust my behavior as well, depending on the racial group that I'm around. So, like at such a diverse school like U of T, it feels like a lot actually. So I can definitely see why like so many students felt that way. And I am very interested in knowing how that changes between racial groups as well. Um, so yeah.
Thank you so much for that answer. So we're going to go to our next question. It has to do with code switching. But to briefly go over code switching, it's a technique used by minority groups where they are not just changing their behavior, but changing their behavior to fit in with a dominant group based on their environment. So, for example, being in the classroom versus being at home. Code switching technically ensures they don't feel ostracized and excluded. Was there ever a time that you had to use code switching to navigate through an interaction?
Absolutely. Honestly, so like I said, my dad is Black Hispanic. So that means that he is Black and he's also Hispanic. So that's a mix that is not often seen, especially at UTM. I don't know any other Black Hispanics.
Yes.
Commonly in the Dominican, in Colombia, or in Panama, such as my dad.
Mhm.
But it just adds nuance to the experience of being Black and being Hispanic individually. So when I'm
Mhm.
around, let's say like other Canadians, so I lived in Canada since I was 14. I feel like I can relate to a lot of like experiences that other Canadians might have, and
Mhm.
I'll I'll present my behavior, my speech in that way. When I'm
Mhm.
around other Hispanics, I'll present myself in a way that like communicates my experiences, like my Hispanic experiences to them. When I'm around
Mhm.
other Black people, I'll communicate myself in a way that shows my experience as a biracial person, as someone with Black identity.
Mhm.
So definitely have used code switching before. And there's also a sense of like almost guilt that goes with it, I think,
Mhm.
for like a biracial person, especially when you feel
Mhm.
like you not are necessarily hiding a part of yourself, but just not showing it or like tamping it down a little bit so other people can feel like your experiences are valid enough to be a part of the
Mhm.
conversation or a part of the community. Um,
Yes,
so that's one of the things that I have to say about that.
that is so interesting. I know this must be like somewhat exhausting at times because it's like you constantly have to, not constantly, but depending on which group you're with, you have to like kind of switch to fit in with that group. And it's almost like you can feel ingenuine at time that ties to the guilt. I do have a question about that a little bit later, but first we're gonna get into section number 2 and
Okay.
question number 3.
All right.
I'd like to ask if you feel like racial and ethnic cues are predictors for your personality expression. So, for example, when you're surrounded by majority white folks or experiencing any form of discrimination in specific situations, do you think that affects how extroverted or how conscientious or how open or how agreeable you are? And just a reminder, openness relates to how down to earth someone is. Conscientiousness relates to being responsible, careful, and diligent. Extroversion relates to expressing positive emotions, being social, talkative, energetic, like how you may be more extroverted during a job interview. And agreeableness is related to being friendly, cooperative, compassionate, and trusting. So, just to reiterate the question, do you believe that cues relating to race and ethnicity can be used as a predictor to how you express yourself around others?
Honestly, yes. I think that the racial and ethnic cues of the groups that I'm around can definitely predict like how I may express myself. For example, like if I'm around a bunch of other Hispanics, my Spanish isn't my first language. I learned it later on in life because of the experiences my dad had living in Panama, like in an area that was more Americanized, more colonized.
Mm,
So Spanish
mhm,
wasn't his first language either. So definitely in a situation where I'm around a lot of Hispanics and I am speaking Spanish and I know that my accent, they can tell that it's not my first
mhm,
language. I'm more conscientious of how I'm presenting myself, making sure I don't seem like I'm not too I don't seem too familiar with the culture because a lot of other Hispanics can be offended about that. They're like, "Oh,
mhm.
you think you know, like you it's not even your first language kind of thing." Um,
Yes.
and also another experience would be around other Black people because obviously I my skin is not very dark. I am biracial. My dad is Black, but I don't look Black. So
Mhm,
having like different experiences that way where I don't want to negate my experiences as a biracial person, which are unique, but I also
mhm.
can't relate to the same experiences that say like a dark skinned person would have, like whatsoever. So being more conscientious of that as well.
That is so true and so interesting because, like, it's been such a long time that everybody would throw mixed people into one category, like, oh, you have black, that means you're black. And then like, and then white people would be like, oh, you're part black, you're definitely black. But it's like they never really, until personally, until recently, actually was like, no, biracial is their own category. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're their own identity. They identify as the ethnicities that, they're born with. I do have a random question though.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you ever experience like prejudice from one group versus the other group growing up? Or like, sorry, you said I think you said you came to Canada at 14. I think
Yeah.
that's what.
Yeah.
So, did you ever experience anything like, let's say, white people being like, "Oh no, you're not like white, you're something else," or like black people saying like, "Oh, you're not black, you're totally like white or something." Did you ever have
Yeah.
any of those experiences?
One of the more interesting experiences I had that I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of unless they've been through it is people see what they want to see, right? So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
when I was living in the States and I lived in Michigan and I lived in a very small town, very
Mm-hmm.
conservative, very white, and it was easier for them to see me as white. Like I have
Yes.
curly hair. Oh, just she's just white girl with curly hair. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so like we don't know like her dad, like whatever. Like we don't know anything about her, but we can see that she's not dark skinned, so she's not black, and we don't know anything else, and that's enough. So I went
Mm-hmm.
to a football game once when I was younger, and I went with my friend Chloe, blonde hair, blue eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
the team that our school was playing against was from the other side of Grand Rapids. So the other side of like the major city we were close to.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the team and the cheerleaders and the fans were Black, right? So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, okay, Chloe, let's like go over there and go see like the cheerleaders." And she's like, "What, like we shouldn't go over there." And I was like, "Why shouldn't we go over there?" She's like, "I don't know if it's safe. Like they're all Black." And I'm like, and it
Mm-hmm.
surprised me because I'm like, well, Chloe, don't you know, like, like my dad is black, like that's
Mm-hmm.
half of me. That's like my family, like, you know,
Yeah.
but they choose to ignore those parts of you, right?
Yes.
Even
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I'm around like other black students on campus, you know, like they choose to see the black side of me and ignore the idea that I'm also biracial, you know? And so
Yes.
they want to see, like, they want to know, they want you to pick sides. Are you black or are you white? Like, what side is
Oh
it?
my gosh.
But
Yeah.
you can't just do that. You know, they're both always a part of me. They always will be. But so many
Exactly.
people say that, like, which are you? I've had that question so many times. I'm like, I'm biracial. Like,
Exactly.
there's no picking. And even another crazy experience I've had just recently is someone saying that I switch ethnicities, like, depending on the
Oh
day.
my gosh. Oh,
Like,
that's terrible.
yeah,
That
like, and
is
I was
so
like,
not
that's
nice.
so crazy because, like, I can't just pick and choose what I want to present and when, like, and if it is that situation, it's very similar to like what the study is talking about with code switching, where it's just like
Exactly.
trying to
Exactly.
feel the situation and trying to you know, appease the community that you're surrounded by it, but they're making it seem, you know, like, oh, she just gets to pick and choose whatever she wants to be that day, and that's who she is, and then forget about it the next day. And that's like one of the harmful consequences of code switching, although it's, you
Yes.
know, a way to make yourself comfortable in the community, right?
It's so true. Okay, so to move on to our next question, it
Mhm.
seems like researchers have found that when racialized individuals are in private versus public domains, their authenticity differs, leaving racialized people feeling ingenuine. When I say authenticity, I'm talking about how you feel about the way you are. So, do you feel like how you show your true self is different when in private domains, such as your home, versus when in public domains, such as school?
For me, it is a question that I still can't answer. And what I mean by that is being biracial, it almost feels like a lifelong journey of knowing
Mhm.
what you're beginning to know what your true self is, right? I have struggled so much with that. You know, when you're a kid, like I said, I was in that conservative white area, so all that mattered was just trying to, you know, get along with everybody and be fun, be friends. I guess identifying more strongly with the white side, and then coming
Mhm.
to Canada where diversity is so strongly encouraged, coming
Yes.
to identify more with my black side and my Hispanic side. And now as an adult, having experiences where I like kind of explored both sides of myself, now kind of realizing, okay, so what is the true self that I identify with? Like, what side does this Isabella like identify with more? Or what does it mean to identify with both at the same time when I'm in private domains like myself versus public domains? And I don't have a straight answer for it because I'm just
Mhm.
sure. I don't know what it's like to be my true self, identifying with both, because I don't know if I ever really have.
Mhm. Okay, so I have another question. Anything you would like to see included in future studies for personality expression of racialized emerging adults?
Ooh. Um, Honestly, I think I just like to see more mixed representation, you know? The mixed community is so diverse. I would love to understand other mixed experiences, you know?
Yeah,
That's
that's so true. All right, Isabella, thank you so much for
of course.
participating in
I
this interview.
I had such a great time. I love talking about this stuff. I'm so glad you asked me.